What's up, everyone? Welcome to Season 2, Episode 8 of the Patel and Kumar Show. I'm your host, Shivam Patel, coming to you live from San Antonio, Texas. And my co-host, Mr. Kumar, coming to you live from Mumbai, India. Mr. Kumar, the trade deadline has passed, and now we're in the stretch run of the NBA season, heading into the playoffs. How's it going for you, Mr. Kumar?
I'm doing extremely well, and we are having a new time, which is Saturday, 7 p.m. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and welcome, Mr. Patel. And this is Mr. Kumar from Amchi, Mumbai. And we're going to, of course, have a very exciting show where we're going to discuss all the news about the NBA trades, which teams got better, which teams lost out on the opportunities. And of course, we are also going to be discussing about Indian Kagers going abroad to study the pros and cons of all those things. So, a very excited show. Saturday evening for me. I'm gonna party, after the show. So,
After
Mr.
party.
Patel, you know, once again, please take on the show. I'm just having some audio issues, so I'll just move out for a little bit of time and come back in again.
All right. So yeah, before Mr. Kumar comes back, before we get started with all the trades, we're gonna be talking about Elgin Baylor, who's a legend in the NBA, who passed away this week, and it was very sad because he was a great player in the NBA and one of the all time greats. He averaged 27 points and 13 rebounds per game in his career. He had a long and illustrious career, and that 27 points per game in his career, that's only second to Wilt Chamberlain and Michael Jordan. So that really showed you the level of score that Elgin Baylor was. And he also was an 11-time All-Star. He had a great career. He was a number one overall pick, of the Los Angeles Lakers. And he had a career high 61 points in a finals game, which still stands today, Mr. Kumar.
Absolutely. And, he was not only a rookie of the year in 1959, but he was also off the court a crusader for, equality and, in terms of getting equal opportunities for colored players.
Mhm.
And, times were really tough during those times. He was also an executive with the Los Angeles Clippers I think, in 2006. So, his contributions to the basketball has been immense. And at that particular time in the 60s, he was the third highest scorer behind Oscar Robertson and Will Chamberlain. But
Crazy.
right now he ranks, of course, 36 with, I think he's got like 23,000 points.
Yeah.
An awesome shooter, rebounder, and a passer. So we just hope his soul rests in peace. Thank you to Elgin Baylor for contributing to the NBA.
Yeah, thank you, Elgin Baylor. Again, rest in peace. He was also an 11-time All-Star, and he's in both the Basketball Hall of Fame of the NBA and the College Basketball Hall of Fame also. So what a great career, what a great life Elgin Baylor had. I was watching his highlights earlier. Because I didn't get to watch him, when I was really young. So Elgin Baylor, rest in peace, and what a great legend, Mr. Kumar. But let's move on to talking about the trades now. Of the NBA trade deadline passed, and it was pretty crazy, Mr. Kumar. There was a bunch of trades, coming in. Thursday morning to afternoon was crazy. But let's first talk about the first trade. Aaron Gordon to the Denver Nuggets, Mr. Kumar. What were your initial thoughts when you heard about this trade?
Well, I think it certainly is an upgrade for Denver because they were not really performing to a very high level this season. What was expected of them, of course, Jokic, is probably the mainstay of that team. He's performing at an MVP level.
Mhm.
Uh, Jamal Murray has we have not seen the same kind of play from Jamal Murray what he had in the bubble. He was, of course, a great scorer in the bubble. He's been a great scorer for the Nuggets, this season as well. But it's been, pretty inconsistent for Jamal Murray. And of course, losing Jeremy Grant in that free agency to Detroit Pistons, that was a huge setback for a team like Denver Nuggets. And he's been performing at a very high level for Detroit. So, so they really had to shore up in order to compete with the Clippers and the Lakers, and of course the Utah Jazz and the Phoenix Suns are also playing phenomenal basketball this season in the West.
I like this move. I agree with a lot of your points, Mr. Kumar. It was a great move for the Denver Nuggets. They got that Aaron Gordon can play the 3 and the 4. He's very athletic. He's another ball handler, because the defense has been really focusing on Jamal Murray and Jokic. He kind of helps space the floor. He's improved his shooting. He can get to the basket. He's a great defender, which if you watch Denver's games, they don't always defend to the highest level. They just try to outscore you. So I think he brings a lot to this team. I think he's going to be motivated, Mr. Kumar, because he's been on a Magic team that's been losing, but now finally he's on a team that can come out of the West. Maybe. I still don't think so, but at least has a shot. And I like this move because Aaron Gordon can continue to make shots and get to the rim and space the floor for the Orlando Magic. I think he'll prove to be a very valuable commodity. He's also a great facilitator, attacking the basket and finding his teammates, Mr. Kumar. So that's kind of an underrated part of
Yeah.
his game.
Yeah, I think it all boils down to the frustration he was having in Orlando Magic. He's been there for like almost 7 seasons, and the team wasn't like moving in any particular direction.
Mhm.
And a player like him would really want to compete at the highest level, and he thought, that moving to a contender or moving to a team which is trying to contend
Mhm.
is somewhat. I mean, he could probably play a role where he could contribute to a large extent. But I still think, it's going to be tough to beat a team like the Clippers and the Lakers, even with the addition of Aaron Gordon. I know, because Jokic is going to be phenomenal. Jamal Murray is going to be decent. Michael Porter Jr. has been playing good basketball.
Mhm.
But really, I mean, Aaron Gordon has not been really consistent in his play in the last 2 seasons for Orlando Magic as well. He's been injured. He's been out of the lineup. He didn't play in the bubble. So he also has to come up good for the Denver Nuggets if they really want to, kind of compete in the Western Conference. It's a tough conference, by the way. I mean, pretty much people are picking the Lakers and the Clippers to probably come to the conference finals. Even though Phoenix Suns and Utah Jazz are probably the top 2 teams right now, uh, and of course the injuries to LeBron James and Anthony Davis is going to have a major impact in the standings of the Lakers as well. But I think it gives them a good chance. But I mean, how soon he adjusts, and of course they added JaVale McGee as well.
Oh,
But of course, yeah, but he's going to be like more like a backup center who plays about 15 minutes a game. But I think the closing lineup that I feel that could work for the Denver Nuggets is Jokic, Murray, Gordon, Paul Millsap, and Michael Porter Jr. So they go with a little bit of a small lineup with actually Jokic playing in the 5.
yeah, and that lineup is very long, very athletic. Porter is, has a large wingspan. Gordon, Murray, if he can get back to his playoff Murray, how he was in the bubble, that will be lethal. And Nikola Jokic. Offense is not a problem for the Denver Nuggets, Mr. Kumar. But I hope Aaron Gordon brings more of a defensive identity because he's really strong. He's long. He's tall. If he could bring a defensive identity and really improve their defense, I think that's really going to help Denver in the Western Conference. And we did a poll question asking, does Aaron Gordon make the Nuggets a title contender? And 54% say yes, 46 say no. I'm kind of in the middle, Mr. Kumar. I still don't think, that's going to make them competitive in the West. Maybe they can get to a conference finals, but I don't think they come out of the West. Mr. Kumar said it perfectly. There's too many other good teams. Utah, the Clippers. I still think the Lakers are going to be very dangerous in the playoffs. I still don't think that gets Denver over the top. I still think they're missing a couple more pieces, to be for them to be able to get to the playoffs, or to get to the finals. Excuse me. I think Michael Porter needs to be a little bit more consistent because some games Michael Porter looks like an all-star, Mr. Kumar. He uses his size, he uses athleticism. In some games, he takes these boneheaded shots, and you can just see Mike Malone wants to pull his hair out. Well, he doesn't have any hair, but his fake hair. He wants to pull his fake hair out, and I think that and he's just a very frustrating player right now, and just inconsistent and very young.
Absolutely. I mean, he's a sophomore.
Yeah.
I think maturity will come as he gets more experience. Yeah, but I mean, I think they're in the top 4, of course, in the
Yeah.
West.
Yeah.
But you really need that impetus from somebody to go over that hump, and that hump is going to be either the Clippers or the Lakers. And it's going to be a tough matchup. I mean, if they really have to ball out of their lives in order to win against these two teams.
Exactly, Mr. Kumar. We agree there. I think they're just a step below, but the Denver's a very young and intriguing team, and we'll see what's going to happen in the playoffs because anything can happen, Mr. Kumar. But let's also talk about Aaron Gordon's former teammate with the Orlando Magic, Nikola Vucevic, who the Magic are completely blowing up their team. Vucevic got traded to the Chicago Bulls, Mr. Kumar, and the Bulls are really trying to build around Zach LaVine and serious about making the playoffs, Mr. Kumar.
Yeah, the East. I mean, the bottom half of the East is quite wide open. And any team can probably, give a push to themselves and probably try and break into that even in the play-in tournament because I mean, there is an opportunity for a lot of teams who are ranked between 7 and 10 in order to get into the play-in tournament and qualify as the seventh and eighth team in the playoffs. So I think it's a good move by the Bulls, and of course, I mean you got to also understand that the Orlando Magic wanted to like pretty much ship out all their big contracts and go for a major rebuild. So of course they shipped out Aaron Gordon to the Denver Nuggets. They shipped Vucevic to the Chicago Bulls, and even Fournier to the Boston Celtics. So the Orlando Magic is pretty certain that they're going to be in go into the lottery, to get a good player, a good pick. But yeah, I mean, team like Chicago Bulls, which was not really at the top half, but not also really at the bottom. They're trying to make a case to come into the playoff. After a big. I mean, after a hiatus for a long time.
It's been a while, and Zach LaVine has been balling this year. He's deserving of an All Star. I like it that they're committing, to Zach LaVine. That they're trying to show him that, hey, Zach LaVine, we'll build around you, and we're trying to get a winner. That pick and roll between Zach LaVine and Vucevic is going to be lethal, Mr. Kumar, because Vucevic can not only roll to the basket, but he also can do a pick and pop. So, like, it's going to be a pick your poison. Who are you going to want to stop? They have Kobe White, Thaddeus Young, who are some decent players. And also Bulls got rid of some bad players, Otto Porter, Wendell Carter Jr. So I think the Bulls shipped out the bad apples, and then they're bringing in a very all-star caliber, high-quality player in Nikola Vucevic. And yeah, Soham is saying it was surprising that Orlando didn't stick with taking Markkanen for this trade. Yeah, I agree, Soham, that I thought Markkanen was going to be shipped out of Chicago with this Vucevic trade, but they're going with the two big lineup, Mr. Kumar. I don't know if that's going to happen, for next season, but at least they're going to try it out for the rest of the season and see if it works.
I think with Markkanen, it was again those injury concerns. The last two seasons he hasn't played a single season. In the entirety. So
Yeah.
that was a major concern for a lot of teams. I think there were news that Markkanen was in the market. To get probably a couple of pieces for the Chicago Bulls, but I think Vucevic. He was an All Star this year, a two-time All Star. So Zach LaVine can definitely take pride that he's got some help now. So at least they can try to be in that seventh, eighth position in the East.
Exactly. And we asked the poll question: does the addition of Nikola Vucevic make the Bulls a playoff team? And I think, yeah, I agree with the 88% say yes. I still think they're going to be in the play-in tournament, Mr. Kumar. We have some experts that are saying, on ESPN that the Bulls can be a fifth or sixth seed. I think that's a little bit pushing it too much. I think there's all these other good teams there, but I think the Bulls can be a team that's in the play-in tournament, and you can tell that they're trying to make the playoffs. They're trying to be a contender, and they're trying to give their fans something to be excited about because they're the third largest market in the U.S. between LA and New York, and they're trying to give their fans some excitement, because they already have Zach LaVine, but they needed always that big. And I think they're trying to, it starts with the defensive end on the floor for the Bulls because they don't have trouble scoring, Mr. Kumar, but they can't stop anyone. And I think that's been their biggest struggle of why they're not in the playoffs currently.
Yeah, and of course, as Soham says, Chicago wins this one.
Yeah, I
Yes,
agree,
they did.
Paula.
They did get better, but how much better is what
A
we have
little.
to evaluate after end of the season. Um, I mean, it's going to be a competition between Atlanta, There's Indiana. There is Miami
Hornet.
Heat, who's in the fourth. Of course, they got a lot better. So I mean, and Boston. I mean, Boston isn't really playing that well, and they're going to be competing for that fifth to eighth kind of position in the Eastern Conference. So it's going to be a tough situation for a team like the Chicago Bulls, but I think at least they can be optimistic about their chances.
They could be optimistic. They have a bright future, but the East is, really stacked right now. It's a big four now in the East, which we'll get to. We'll talk about the Heat, in a little in Oladipo in just a few minutes, Mr. Kumar. But right now in the East, it has to be the Sixers, Bucks, Nets, and the Heat. And I think the rest of the teams just are just in the middle of the pack. The Hornets, the Heat, the Celtics, all those other teams. But Mr. Kumar, let's also talk about the Western Conference trades. There were some big trades that went on in the Western Conference. Rajon Rondo went to the Clippers. JJ Redick went to the Mavericks. Norman Powell went to the Blazers, and JaVale McGee landed with the Nuggets. So we're going to talk about each one of those trades. But before we do that, which one of those trades stood out to you the most, Mr. Kumar? That yes, this is an impactful trade.
Uh, well, I think the most impactful is, I would say, Norman Powell. Norman Powell to the Blazers makes them much better. Of course, I mean, you had Gary Trent Jr., who's also, uh, improving and coming up there. And he did play excellent basketball in the bubble for Portland. But Normal Powell brings in experience and also, championship experience. So that is something, and he's been shooting almost 43% from three this season. So, I mean, I think it's a very good addition for the Portland Trailblazers. It's because they really needed that push in order to be in that top four. And because now the Lakers are going to drop down. So I think I rate Normal Powell's addition to the Portland Trailblazers better than the other three additions.
Okay, I agree with you that Norman Powell was a nice addition for the Blazers, but I have to go with Rajon Rondo to the Clippers. I love this trade because Mr.
I
Kumar,
knew
the
that.
Clippers
I knew
filled.
that. But okay, I'm gonna continue. I'm gonna come to that. But you go ahead with your argument.
Okay. I think because the Clippers needed a point guard, Mr. Kumar, so they filled that need. They were trying to get him, during the summer, but Rajon Rondo was chasing the money, and you could just tell he didn't want to be in Atlanta, Mr. Kumar. So he wasn't playing motivated. So we can't take those numbers for Atlanta. He was pitiful. But now he's going to a team that can win a championship. He's going to bring leadership, accountability to Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, somebody that they respect. He's a two-time champion, Mr. Kumar. Playoff Rondo is something you cannot ignore. He just turns it up to another level in the playoffs. And I actually like that they got rid of Lou Williams, Mr. Kumar. That was a great move because Lou Williams, he has great regular season, but as you saw in the playoffs, he was not good. His production really falls. He's getting older, Mr. Kumar. He already has an old man's game. So I don't think that translates to the playoffs. So it was actually good that they got rid of Lou Williams. But I love that the Clippers have a point guard that can facilitate. The ball doesn't have to be in Kawhi Leonard's hands and Paul George's hands. They don't have to play the point forward. They can have somebody that can get the ball to them in the right spots and can be a great floor general.
Well, I mean, you're going by history, of course, and history says that he does have a switch, which he turns off during turns on during the playoffs, and that's called playoff Rondo switch, right? Uh, but of course, he's gotten older. When he was in the Lakers, there was not much expectations. Actually, he was more like a backup point guard. And it just happened that he played really great, especially in the bubble, and he did help the Lakers, win the championship. And that's how the whole playoff Rondo thing got, more votes than anything else. But uh, now the expectation for the Clippers is, I feel, too high because I I mean they should have got Rajon Rondo, probably last year, just before the season during free agency. I
But
mean
they
they
didn't
would
want to
have.
overpay.
Well, they're going to pay the same amount
Hmm.
to him. But they also lost Lou Williams. They also lost, second round pick, to Atlanta.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I think this has become a more expensive buy than what they would have had if he was signed at the beginning of the season. And at the same time, you get a player who can gel well with the team. Now it's like Rondo is in the middle of the season. He's had a very bad season with the Atlanta Hawks.
But
He's averaging 4 points and I think some 2 or 3 assists. So I think you know I get the point that the Clippers need a proper point guard, who can facilitate. But I just don't think Rondo is the answer. It was a desperate move by the Clippers because they
Mhm.
needed a point guard. Uh, I mean, now it's more like a lottery right now for the Clippers. Whether
Mhm.
that switch really gets turned on during the playoffs or not, or whether we see something else.
I think that switch will be turned on because he's motivated to win another championship, which could be his third, which is very impressive, Mr. Kumar, to only add to his Hall of Fame resume. And in that Lakers finals, he was the third best player on the Lakers behind, of course, LeBron and AD. He'll be the third best player, behind Kawhi and Paul George. He's not expected to take the scoring load. The defense won't be focused on Rajon Rondo. They're going to be trying to stop PG and Kawhi. So I think that's going to make it more free flowing for him that he can be able to get to his spots. But he's a pass first point guard, Mr. Kumar. So I think he'll take the shots when they come to him, but he'll be focused more on getting Paul George and Kawhi Leonard their shots because right now, ladies and gentlemen, Kawhi Leonard is playing the point forward, and he's improving in that position, but you can tell he's not that comfortable having the ball in his hands all the time. He's more comfortable at the three, on the wing, either on the post also. So Rajon Rondo can get in the ball in those spots, Mr. Kumar. And you can't really take
Well, I
the.
hope so. I mean, that's. I mean, oh, come on. I mean, they made the trade because they're hoping he could do that.
He will. He
I
will.
I just don't feel. I just don't feel he's. I mean, what he did with the Lakers was, I think it was lucky for the Lakers that
Hmm.
he could turn on that switch because, of course, I mean, nobody was expecting Rondo to be the third best star with the Lakers, right? I mean,
Mhm.
it was either going to be like KCP or Caruso or Kuzma.
Mhm.
But I mean, I think the Lakers got lucky last season in the bubble. But let's hope that your Clippers are able to, turn on that switch come May.
Oh, Mr. Kumar, they are already so much better than they were last year. Actually, getting back to it, Rondo's not going to be expected to be a top three player. It's going to be the pecking order is going to be Kawhi, Paul George second, Marcus Morris third. I forgot about Marcus Morris. Rajon Rondo's going to have no pressure on him. He can be the fourth or fifth best player on the Clippers, and he just needs to do what he's got to do, Mr. Kumar. He has that championship DNA in him. There's no expectations for Rajon Rondo. He just needs to. He's already an upgrade over Patrick Beverly. Come on. Patrick Beverly tries hard, Mr. Kumar, but he's just not a great offensive player. Rajon Rondo is an upgrade, and I think that we'll see what's going to happen with the Clippers. And we can't also forget his defensive prowess. He does a great job of
Come on,
pressuring the point guard.
he's not great defensive. Don't
But
don't don't even don't even get into his defensive
no, he's good.
prowess.
He's
No,
decent. He's
he's
decent.
okay. He's okay. I mean,
He's
but
decent.
I mean, no, I mean he's okay. I mean,
But
of course he has the experience, and probably he'll get maybe one or two steals in a few games or something. But I mean, defensively, it's not adding anything to the Clippers. But I mean, they shouldn't matter to the Clippers because you have Paul George, you have Leonard, you have Morris, you have Patrick Beverly. So defensively, it shouldn't really matter if Rajon Rondo really plays at a high defensive level. But I do not kid anyone
no,
that he's going to be good defensively.
no, I'm not saying. I think he's going to be competent defensively, Mr. Kawhi. I never said he's going to be the best player. He's going to be at least, force some turnovers because he has that veteran savviness. He knows how to. He's good at steals, Mr. Kumar. I think that's where he's going to add it to. And the Clippers, what I really liked about this Rondo trade is they're the worst team in the clutch. Well, what's Rajon Rondo? He makes a lot of clutch shots. He made a lot of clutch shots with the Lakers. He makes a lot of winning plays, Mr. Kumar. And as Kawhi Leonard said after
No,
the
but in the last 5 years, he's made clutch shots like one season with the Lakers last season. Okay, so I mean it's a lottery. I mean, I'm telling you, it was a desperate move by the Clippers
no,
because they
no,
wanted a point guard.
It was a money move by the Lakers.
I think I think I
By the
think they should
Clippers.
have really gone out and got probably Lonzo Ball or something. I mean, he would have been a much better addition. He's
Hmm.
great defensively, and I mean, he's playing the best basketball of his career.
He is, but Rajon Rondo's that veteran. Lonzo Ball has not even been to the playoffs, Mr. Kumar. Rajon Rondo has won 2 championships, played with a lot of great, playoff teams. But back to my point, Kawhi Leonard said after the playoffs, after the Clippers lost, we need to improve our basketball IQ. Well, bingo. That's where Rajon Rondo comes in, Mr. Kumar. He's one of the highest IQ players on both ends of the floor in the NBA. He's instantly going to come and help them make winning plays. He's going to hold Kawhi Leonard, Paul George accountable. He's going to be that great leader in the locker room that they're going to respect. His value, Mr. Kumar, is not going to be quantified on the court. It's going to be quantified off the court, on the practice floor, and in the locker room. And I still think you have this perception though of Rajon Rondo with the Hawks, Mr. Kumar. No, we have to forget. We don't count the Hawks because he didn't want to be there in Atlanta and he was injured. So we have to
But
forget.
he got signed for $7.5 million a season.
Well, that was a desperate move, Mr. Kumar. That was a desperate move. I think he never wanted to back up Trey Young after he won a championship.
I mean, that was the only option he got. The Clippers didn't offer him anything. I mean, but anyway, bygones be bygones.
We
I
can let
just
that
hope.
be. We can let that
Yeah,
be.
I just hope. I mean, there's that switch gets turned on, and I'm hoping that the Clippers, benefit from it. But that makes the West more exciting. I think let's move on to the East now.
Wait, one more thing I wanted to say before we move on to the East.
Sure, sure.
JJ Redick to the Mavericks, I love
Oh
that.
yeah, yeah.
That was a really good move because Luka Doncic is now they have shooters 1 through 5 position. Maxi Kleba, Tim Hardaway Jr., Dorian Finney-Smith. Now JJ Redick, and I think that's going to make it really tough to stop. And I think so Hawks were Rondo's vacation spot. He's back in the competition now. Exactly, I definitely agree
Yeah.
with you on that.
Rondo was having those chili pepper wings
At Magic
where
City.
at Magic City, and now Lou Williams is like, hey, you know what? Let's switch places. I'm gonna go for those wings, for those thighs, for some legs, all those kind of things. And Rondo gets shipped back to the Los Angeles Clippers.
Exactly. Lou Williams is basically in retirement mode right now because he's old. So I think it was a great move that the Clippers got rid of, Lou Williams. And yes, Vatsa is saying, how did the Arturis manage to bring Vucevic? Well, he threw in the necessary pieces, a couple picks, Otto Porter, Wendell Carter, that the Magic wanted, some young players. So, and Kapil, we're going to be talking about Indian basketball in the Indian Turka segment. We're going to be asking, is Indian ballers studying abroad good or bad? So that's going to be coming in just about 10 minutes or so. So be sure to stay tuned for that. And thank you, everybody, for watching, and continue to put your comments in the chat section below. But before we get to the Eastern Conference, just my quick point I wanted to make about JJ Redick. I think it's going to bring floor spacing to the Mavericks. It's going to open up the floor for Luka Doncic because he likes to attack the basket. He'll make the defense collapse and he'll kick it out to him. And JJ Redick's a great catch and shoot player. They're going to do a lot of dribble handoffs with Luka and JJ Redick, and I think it's going to make the Mavs offense even tougher to stop, Mr. Kumar.
Absolutely. I mean, he's a proven veteran who's, brings in that floor spacing, as you mentioned. And right now, the Dallas are hovering in that seventh position in the West. So they did get better. Is it going to propel them to the top four? No. Is it? I mean, but because there's absolutely very high competition in the top four in the West. But it did make them slightly better. I would give them like a B plus in terms of making that trade.
I agree.
And it does give them room to work in terms of with Luka, with Porzingis, and with JJ Redick.
Yep, exactly. And Soham is saying Dallas is 19th at 3-point shooting. That's going up. I agree with you, Soham, but I think Dallas is a dangerous team. But I don't think, like Mr. Kumar said, they're not in the realm of the other top teams in the Western Conference. But let's move on, Mr. Kumar, to the Eastern Conference trades. And we had a bunch of trades in the Eastern Conference. First of all, Victor Oladipo going to the Miami Heat, which he was always linked to the Miami Heat, Mr. Kumar, so he finally gets there. George Hill to the Sixers, which is a sneaky move. We're going to be talking about that in a few minutes. Evan Fournier, as the Magic continue to blow up the operation, to the Boston Celtics. And of course, like we talked about earlier, Lou Williams to the Atlanta Hawks. So before we get into all these players, Mr. Kawhi, I'm going to ask you again, which one of these trades was the most impactful to you?
Well, impactful would be Oladipo, uh, because he is a high level player. Of course, he was frustrated in Houston. Of course, he was injured the previous 2 seasons with the Indiana Pacers. But I don't think it makes the Heat really a championship contender yet. I think adding George Hill in Philadelphia
Hmm.
makes them much better and uh, much more equipped to probably, uh, match up with the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah, I think George Hill was the most impactful trade out of all these because he brings another long wing defender to the Sixers who are really trying to bolster their defensive, prowess. He's a backup point guard, to Ben Simmons. I think he'll be great. And I wanted to say I'm glad actually the Sixers did not get Kyle Lowry because I thought he was a little bit too ball dominant. And, he's an older player that would have taken away from Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. So I'm glad that they got George Hill, who's going to bring a lot of defense, bring a lot of toughness, bring that championship, mindset to the Sixers. But back to Oladipo, I think that he's going to bring scoring, to the Heat, because he's going to make the Heat, tough to stop on the offensive end of the floor. He'll be someone else that can create their own shot, beat people off the dribble. He can go off one night, and I think he's going to make the Heat, more than one dimensional
Mm.
to stop on the offensive end of the floor. I still think the Heat are teetering, as a top four team in the East. But I think Victor Oladipo, if he can get back to his All Star days, I think he can be a dangerous option for the Miami Heat.
Absolutely. I mean, I think this being in the Heat gives Victor Oladipo, uh, you know, uh, some motivation in terms of contending for a championship with Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero. It's a great team. It's a great organization. And if he can get back to his Orlando Magic days, I think he can be a real player in the Eastern Conference probably next season.
Mm-hmm.
But this season, I mean, they've been playing good basketball for the last couple of weeks or a month. They're in the top four. Uh, so I mean, Victor Oladipo's results will probably come in. I feel in the coming seasons. Whereas adding George Hill, just makes the Philadelphia 76ers much more stronger defensively, and also getting some veteran presence in terms in the point guard position. Uh, so once Embiid comes back, with Embiid, Simmons, George Hill, Tobias
Mm.
Harris, you have Danny Green and
Seth Curry.
Seth Curry, Shake Milton. I
Mhm.
think it's a formidable team to compete against the Brooklyn Nets in a 7 game series.
I cannot tell you how deep the Sixers are. We did even forgot Furkan Korkmaz, who's also just a great shooter for them. Matisse Thybulle, who's a great defender. The Sixers are really deep. I'm glad that they didn't have to give away Danny Green or Seth Curry, Mr. Kumar, and that they were able to continue to add their team and add to their team. How is that Doc Rivers Coach of the Year looking, Mr. Kumar? That prediction is looking pretty good. They stayed in the number one in the Eastern Conference, Mr. Kumar, despite Joel Embiid being injured. But no, we'll see what's going to happen with that. But I
Well, I
think
mean, it's a competition between Steve Nash and Doc Rivers.
Yeah, I agree. And even you may throw in Monty Williams, in there, but yeah, it's going to be very interesting, Mr. Kumar. Let's also talk about, Evan Fournier before we get on to the free agent winners to the Celtics. He just adds shooting to the Celtics, Mr. Kumar. He was coming up an expiring contract with the Orlando Magic. He's a decent defender, but he mainly adds shooting to the Boston Celtics.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think it was just like a move that had just to be made by the Boston Celtics. I really thought they should have made some big moves because, yes, Jason Tatum is playing well as an All Star. Jalen Brown is playing well as an All Star, but I just don't think they have enough arsenal with them to probably become Eastern Conference champions. Because right now they're going to compete with probably Miami Heat, even the New York Knicks or Atlanta Hawks, and it's going to be a very tough first round matchup for Boston Celtics, even with the addition of even Fournier. Uh,
Yeah.
it does add a little bit of shooting. Kemba Walker is not really, up there yet, maybe because of injury or whatever. But they also lost Daniel Tays, so they also lost a good big man. Uh, so I think Boston's Danny Ainge. I'm very confused what Danny Ainge is thinking about with this team because I really feel that uh, if they don't really get into at least the second round this season, Brad Stevens gets fired.
Ooh, that's an interesting take, Mr. Kumar. Yeah, he should be on the hot seat. I feel like the media gives him a pass because he's like a young up and coming mind. But I agree. He disappointed me last year. He couldn't even solve the Heat's zone defense. And then this year with the Boston Celtics having a chance to really build off of that Eastern Conference Finals appearance, they've been struggling. And even you can tell that Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum are a little bit disgruntled right now because they're doing all they can, but they really don't have Kemba Walker struggling. He's not living up to that money, Mr. Kumar. They had a chance to do something at the trade deadline, but they didn't. They had a chance to get Aaron Gordon, but the Magic wanted, Marcus Smart and a combination of picks, and they didn't want to give up Marcus Smart because he's the heart and soul of their team. But you have to do what you have to do, Mr. Kumar. I thought you could have parted ways with Marcus Smart and really try to improve your team that way.
Absolutely. So I think even with the addition of even Fournier, I think Boston Celtics don't really qualify to take the next step. They still remain in that 5 to 8 position, maybe in the East, and it's going to be very tough to compete with even Miami Heat, with the Philadelphia 76ers, and of course the Brooklyn Nets. So I think
Agree.
they needed some big moves to be done if they really want to compete this season. So it seems like they're going to uh, be happy with the second round exit in the Eastern Conference this season, and probably try and do something for next season.
I don't even know if they make it to the second round, Mr. Kumar, but we'll see. Anything can happen, with the Boston Celtics. We will continue to see where they go during the season. But let's move on, Mr. Kumar. Let's quickly talk about our free agent winners and losers. So let's start on the winner side, Mr. Kumar. Who made the biggest splash? And we asked, before we get to that, we asked the poll question, or losers first. We asked the poll question saying who is the biggest trade deadline loser, and it looks like they said the Toronto Raptors because they kept Kyle Lowry. Do you agree with this, Mr. Kumar? Who was your biggest trade deadline loser?
Well, I would say Raptors. Yes, uh, of course they kept Kyle Lowry. They should have probably uh, taken somebody, but they wanted too much for Kyle Lowry. I think Masai Ujiri was thinking that probably Kyle Lowry, demands much better prospects in the market, but they wanted Taylor Horton Tucker apart from KCP and Dennis Schroeder from the Lakers, because of which that deal did not happen. They wanted Tyler Hero from the Miami Heat,
Mhm.
because of which that deal did not happen. So it was pretty much boiling down to Miami Heat and the Los Angeles Lakers. But I'm actually happy that the Los Angeles Lakers did not clear out their roster to get Kyle Lowry.
And I'm glad the Sixers did not clear out the roster to get Kyle Lowry. Also, I think those teams made the smart moves. Raptors are the biggest loser because Kyle Lowry turned 35 on the trade deadline. He's getting old. He's not having as great of a season. He lost his kind of explosiveness, but he'll always play hard, Mr. Kumar. And I think the Raptors were definitely the biggest loser. And we'll see if they're going to move Kyle Lowry, during the season because Kyle Lowry, I believe he's going to be a free agent, Mr. Kumar, right after this year.
Yes, yes. And in addition to that, I would also add Houston Rockets to that list, is because even though they shipped out Oladipo, I don't think they really got enough assets back from
Yeah,
Miami,
yeah.
for Oladipo. I think they just got scared in terms of Oladipo probably leaving at the end of the season and them not getting anything out of it. They got Avery Bradley, Kelly Olynyk, and of course 2 second-round picks. I thought at least they should have had 1 first-round pick for Oladipo.
Yeah, they got like pennies for Oladipo. They didn't get very much. I definitely agree, as they should have. And so I'm saying I don't think the Raptors are losers. They traded people on expiring contracts, and hey, Kyle is an icon in Toronto. Yeah, Kyle is an icon. I still think Vince Carter is the greatest Raptor, Mr. Kumar, but we can have that debate for another day. But I think he's not in the Raptors' long-term plans. I thought the Raptors wanted to go younger, and he doesn't really fit that mold, Mr. Kumar.
Uh, well, I mean, he's very loyal. He's
Yeah,
been, very much loved in Toronto. So it'll be very sad to see him leave that team. And he's been very clear that he is willing to sign even a 1 day contract with the Toronto Raptors when he retires, because he want to retire as a Raptor. So yeah, I mean, teams take different directions. I thought the Raptors, after winning that championship and losing Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green to free agency, didn't do much even the previous season. Didn't do much this season. Of course, they signed Fred Van Vliet. Pascal Siakam is there, but I don't think they have enough assets to really compete in the East.
yeah,
I think
they don't.
they need to make a big splash. Either get some star back to Toronto if they want to compete, or again it's like a rebuild process, which is going to take 3 or 4 years before they find themselves in that playoff contention.
I don't think it's as much of a rebuild because they still do have, Fred Van Fleet, who's an effective player, and Pascal Siakam, and Pascal Siakam specifically, has bounced back. I think they're a team that's going to teeter on the 7th, 8th seed in the East, Mr. Kumar, in the play-in. So I don't think it's going to be a complete rebuild, but I do agree that they definitely going to need a star to be able to get up into that upper echelon, in the East. So let's talk about free agency, or excuse me, trade deadline winners, Mr. Kumar. Who is your biggest winner of the trade deadline? I think I know your answer. The audience said the Heat, but go ahead.
Uh, for me, actually, it's been the Nuggets,
Yeah.
uh, because I think after losing Jeremy Grant, they needed somebody to shore up their offense, and they got a nice like a small forward, power forward in Aaron Gordon. So I think my vote goes to Nuggets. As I said with the Heat, I mean they did get Oladipo, who has been an All Star, but uh, it's I don't think it's gonna fructify this season. I think it's gonna be better next season.
Yeah, I think it's going to be better for them next season. That he's going to make more of an impact.
But
For
I mean,
me,
hopefully he signs with the Heat. I mean, hopefully he signs because he's gonna be a free agent at the end of the season.
let's see if he's going to be a rental, Mr. Kumar, or he's going to resign. I think he's going to resign because he's always been linked to Miami. We'll see. I think it has to be. I think it's a tie for me between the Nuggets and the Bulls because the Nuggets, yes, they're getting into the contention for the West to come out of the West, but Bulls, I like it that they're going to make the playoffs. They're really trying to make that playoff push. They improved their team, with Zach LaVine, so I think it's going to be a tie. But we'll see, Mr. Kumar. But I guess we got to move on. So let's do some trivia, Mr. Kumar. We're going to be doing some NBA trade deadline trivia and some Indian basketball trivia. So are you ready, Mr. Kumar?
Hey man, you're asking the wrong person. You got to ask the audience if they're ready.
All right, audience, are you guys ready for some trivia? We're going to be testing me and Mr. Kumar's knowledge of both the NBA and Indian basketball. So let's start with the NBA first, Mr. Kumar. This is going to be all trade deadline trivia questions. So before we let's get to the first question to start, Mr. Kumar. Let's see. So as we get ready to see, our first question, audience members, again, if you put your answer in the chat section, below, and me and Mr. Kumar will read your answers, live on the shows, be able to help, me and Mr. Kumar out and enjoy, this the trivia, Mr. Kumar.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm ready, and I think the audience is ready too. So let's get started.
Yep, let's get started. So, I started with the Houston Rockets, later played for the Phoenix Suns, Los Angeles Lakers, and San Antonio Spurs. Who am I? So, Antonio McDyess, Robert Ory, Steven Jackson, or Tracy McGrady. Okay, audience members, again, put your answer in the chat section below. But Mr. Kumar, who are you choosing?
Uh, I think it's Robert Horry.
Yeah, it's B.
I think he's played for all four of the teams. I don't really know much about Antonio McDyess. I know for a fact that Stephen Jackson and Tracy McGrady never played for the Los Angeles Lakers.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be B, Robert Ory. And let's see the answer. Let's see if me and Mr. Kumar are right. Yep, Robert Ory, big shot Rob. He hit so many clutch shots, Mr. Kumar. Soham, yes, exactly. It is Robert Ory. He helped the Spurs win that 2005 championship against the Detroit Pistons. He made that huge shot in Detroit. He also made some huge shots with the Lakers and with the Rockets. How many championships does Robert Ory have, Mr. Kumar? Like how many?
Five, I think.
Wow. So he has a championship ring for every finger on his hand.
I think he has 5 championships. I think he has 3 with the Lakers and 2 with San Antonio Spurs, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know. I think so. Okay.
All right. For the second question, Shaq and Kobe Bryant couldn't stand playing with each other anymore in Los Angeles. O'Neal was traded to which team where he would win his 4th championship?
Yeah, that's pretty easy. I think the audience should really know about. Are there any audience members who are coming with the answers? Or
let's see it. Yep, Soham, Miami. So the Miami Heat. See, Mr. Kumar, are you going with C?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Yep.
He won with Dwayne Wade.
In
I
06.
think it was 06, yes. 06.
It was against the Dallas Mavericks. I remember watching that series against.
I think Pat Riley was the coach then.
Yeah, and they beat Dirk Nowitzki and the Dallas Mavericks at the time. We thought the Dallas Mavericks had a chance to win that championship, and they didn't. And after they lost that championship, people were like, Dirk is not going to win a championship. And of course, they later beat LeBron. But Shaq was able to.
That was also the time when they thought that Jason Kidd would win a championship.
Yeah. Yes.
Because he was in the Mavs as well at that time.
Exactly. And Shristi also said Miami. So good job, Shristi. Good job, Soham, for getting the answer right. And continue to put your answers, in the chat section below. As we're going to move on to the third question. Hey, we're 2 for 2, Mr. Kumar. All right. Who is the most traded player in NBA history? So audience members, put your answer in the chat section below. The answer choices are Drew Gooden, Trevor Ariza, Joe Smith, who I actually never heard of, Mr. Kumar, and
even Ben Wallace. No, I don't know. I at least from the names that I know, I'm picking maybe Trevor Ariza.
Yeah, Trevor Ariza. I think he's been traded. Now he's on the Portland Trailblazers now, Mr. Kumar, but he was on the Magic, the Lakers, a couple of the Rockets.
I think Miami Heat.
Yeah.
He's played for the Lakers. Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, Phoenix Suns. Exactly. Yeah. So I'm saying Trevor Ariza. Yeah, he was with the
and Raptors. Was he there with the Raptors?
I think he had a small stint with the Raptors. I may or may not be wrong. I don't remember, Mr. Kumar, but maybe so. But I think we're going to go with Trevor Ariza, and it looks like Soham's also saying that. And is he on the Blazers now, Mr. Kumar? I know he was on the Blazers last year, but didn't play in the bubble because he had to deal with some off the court stuff.
I'm not sure. I don't know if he's still in a roster or something, but because his name was also Wow, 11 deals.
11 teams, Mr. Kumar, and he's had a long career, and he won that
I don't
championship
think
with.
I don't think it's 11 teams, but he has had 11 deals because some of those teams might have got repeated or something.
Oh, okay, 11 deals. So yeah, as we move on to the next question, for the trivia, with the 13th pick in the 1996 draft, selected Kobe Bryant, but soon traded him to the Los Angeles Lakers for Vlade Divac. Which team was that? So, audience members,
That's an
again,
easy answer. That's an easy answer. I think
Pacers, Nets,
most people should know that.
Hornets, or Raptors.
No.
Who?
It's C Charlotte Hornets. They
Hornets.
they were the one to draft him.
Yeah. See, Charlotte Hornets. So let's see the answer. Yep, Charlotte Hornets. Man, we've been on fire with these trivia questions, Mr. Kumar. All right, now let's move on to Indian basketball, that's Mr. Kumar's specialty. I'm still learning about Indian basketball, but let's see how we do. And Indian basketball fans in the comment section, be sure to butt in and put what you think is going to be the right answer in the chat section below. So, what is the Indian team's men's current world ranking? Is it 56, 66, 76, or 86? A lot of sixes, Mr. Kumar.
Yeah.
Do you know the answer? And audience questions, I'm going to have to ask for a lifeline here.
I think I know the answer. I think, but you go ahead first. Choose your answer, then I'll probably get in.
I'm going with Soham on this. 76. I trust Soham and Tristy at 76.
It is 76. I think they were 74 before the window, and then they lost 2 places and 76 right now. Yeah.
76. Okay. So yeah, it looks like 76 is the right answer. Good job, Tristy. Good job, Soham, for getting that answer right also. So let's move on to the second Indian basketball question. Which player is nicknamed Air India? Is it Singh, Vishesh, Robinson, or TJ Sahi? Ooh, I'm going to be honest with you. I do not know this answer, Mr. Kumar.
At least you have heard the name Vishesh Briguvanshi, right?
And Satnam. I know two. I've heard 2 out of the 4.
So yeah, I mean, this is more like a learning for you about Indian basketball players. I think the answer is TJ Sahi. It should be D, but it's still listed as C. But it's B, TJ Sahi.
TJ Sahi, and Soham's also saying TJ Sahi, and Mr. Kumar is saying that as well. He said none of the others, so process of elimination. Oh yeah, it is TJ Sahi. Wow, look at those hops, Mr. Kumar. He has a nice.
So I mean, he's won a lot of dunk competitions in India, of course, competing with Indian players. He's probably 5'9", 5'8", 5'9", maybe.
Wow. So he's like Robinson.
Yeah, but he is like similar to Nate Robinson, but he was a high flyer, won a lot of dunk contests, and he was a live wire on the field. I mean, he used to give his everything. So I think, so TJ Sahi is the answer. Air India is his nickname. So I think that's the end of the trivia questions, if I'm not mistaken. So
it is.
I think he's 6 feet. Wow. I don't know, with the shoes or without the shoes. I don't know.
Let's see.
He looks shorter than me.
So shout out to TJ Sahi.
Yeah, and shout out to the Ekalavyas team as well for putting out those Indian trivia questions. Thank you very much, and let's move on to the spicy
favorite section.
And on YouTube, the Patel and Kumar NBA talk show, Indian Tadka.
Welcome to the Indian Tadka section of the Patel and Kumar show. So we're going to be talking about today, is Indian ballers studying abroad good or bad? Of course, the last episode, we weren't able to get to this conversation. We wanted to give it its due time. I know me and Mr. Kumar have a lot of points, we want to share. But yeah, that's our question. Should Indian ballers study abroad? So again, put your, comments in the chat section below, Mr. Kumar. And I'll let you take a stab at this first, Mr. Kumar. What are some of your points for the pros of Indian ballers studying abroad?
I think it is a stepping stone in order to probably either get a college scholarship or become professional basketball players and play in different leagues across the world. And of course, the aim is to play for in the NBA, right, or the WNBA. But it's very heartening that we have at least one player who is on a D1 scholarship, and that is Sanjana Ramesh, who was a guest on one of our episodes
Yeah,
last season.
shout out.
Yes, she plays for, I think, the University of, I mean,
Northern
Nevada. If I'm,
Arizona.
huh?
University of
Arizona.
Northern Arizona.
Yeah, Northern Arizona. So good luck to her. And she was the first Indian D1 player, I mean, of Indian descent to score, or as a
Mhm.
sophomore, the youngest, I guess. So congratulations to her. Of course, we
Yep.
have players like Harsimran Kaur who are going to. But my major concern is only that a lot of them are in prep schools, not on college scholarships yet. So whether they really qualify in terms of talent to become either a D3, D2, or a D1, basketball scholarship guys, because I really feel that they should have college experience in order before they become professional players. Uh, I do not want to see them as professional players directly from high school, like Satnam Singh. But of course, the situation with Satnam was a little bit different. But we also have Prince Paul Singh, who's in the G League, who's also considered to be probably one of those talented players who can probably play in the NBA
Mhm.
sometime soon. But uh, my biggest concern is all these kids playing in prep schools, and do they really qualify in terms of talent to get onto some kind of a scholarship program in college teams?
We'll see, Mr. Kumar, because they're definitely going to need to prove themselves. But I think it's a positive step that they are in prep schools, because that prep schools really, are very competitive and they're very selective. So them getting into the prep schools is the positive side, and the prep schools give you the necessary resources to be able to get that scholarship and be able to pursue your dreams, in college in the professional levels. Because prep schools, there's a lot of prep schools here in the U.S., Mr. Kumar. They're all over the country. They have some of the best coaches in the US, some of the best players, trainers. So they show you all around how to train, how to be a professional, the right mindset that you have to have to eat right, to sleep, Mr. Kumar. So I think, and a lot of colleges like to offer scholarships to kids in prep school. So I think that a lot of these kids are in prep schools right now will eventually get a scholarship as they continue to prove themselves on the court and continue to put up the stats necessary. And colleges are going to see that they're a right fit. They're international players. They love that because that helps them market their school, to other international players, Mr. Kumar. But I think, it gives great international exposure, for these kids, because they're playing around, a lot of these scouts, they're playing against high level competition, where they'll be able to showcase their skills and show, what they got, Mr. Kumar.
Yeah, my other concern is not uh, them getting scholarships, getting competitive environment or something, because I really want to see them get good minutes playing,
Yeah.
playing basketball. I mean, the case with Prince Paul, of course, it's just his first season in the G League, but I mean, I think they played about 8 or 9 games in the bubble this year in the G League, and I think he stepped on the court like once and got like maybe 5 minutes of game time. Um, so unless and until these guys don't get game time, it's going to be a very difficult proposition in terms of even trying to become professional players, because Indian society, as such, always education has been the most important aspect rather than sports. But of course, these guys are lucky. They got trained in the NBA Academy in India, which is doing phenomenal job of selecting
Mhm.
talent. They've had five people from the NBA Academy who have got scholarships in prep schools. The latest one is Harshvardhan Tomar from the state of Madhya Pradesh, who was with the NBA Academy. So, So it's just not, I mean, of course, they're getting in terms of their sport, but they also need some kind of an education in order to sustain throughout their lives.
They do, and Soham was saying it does help that a lot of schools in the U.S. give need-based scholarships too. So getting on the basis of your studies is good help. So yes, so you not only get a scholarship for playing, but you also get a scholarship for education. It's completely paid for, so you kind of get the best of both worlds. You get to enjoy being a student athlete in the U.S., which comes with a lot of perks. And also, you get to get you get to study and get your education because no matter what happens in your professional career, it's always important you fall back on your education because basketball is not going to be forever, sports are not going to be forever, Mr. Kumar. But back to, I wanted to give a shout out to the Indian academy, the NBA Academy. Is doing great initiatives, getting a lot of these kids international exposure. Like Mr. Kumar said, a lot of these kids are continuing to get opportunities abroad, whether it's the U.S., Canada, all over the world, because that shows that Indian basketball is on par, Mr. Kumar, with the rest of the world because they're getting players to come abroad and be able to showcase their skills. It's just all about the developmental phase, Mr. Kumar. Once they get to the U.S., how can they develop their game to be able to have a successful career?
No, no, absolutely. And mentioning about NBA Academy India, we're going to have Scott Fleming on our show
Yeah, yeah.
in the next episode, which is on April 8th, 9 p.m. IST. Scott Fleming, who is the director of the NBA Academy in India, he's going to join us. And of course, we're going to be asking him about the development programs the NBA Academy is doing in India. And of course, his perspectives as an Indian national coach, and then of course, turning towards talent development with the NBA Academy. So it's going to be an exciting show on April 8th, 9 p.m. That's our next show. But once again, I mean, as it's it's a mixed bag for these players. I just hope we get these players to really perform at a high level. They get of course, better training facilities, better
Exactly.
resources in terms of trying to become better basketball players, and hopefully, we see some of them, get picked in the WNBA or the NBA, in a few years' time.
Exactly, because while I was looking at the list of Indian players studying abroad, all over the world, and there's some talented players. I was watching some highlights, Mr. Kumar. There's a lot of players with a lot of potential. It's just like I said earlier, developing that potential, rounding out their game because you can have as much potential as you want, but if you don't develop and you don't continue to improve, then that's only going to be potential. So you have to continue to develop. I think they're in the right places with some of the best coaches and players in the country. Universities are continue to look for the best talent, Mr. Kumar, specifically in international talent, because you watch right now the March Madness tournament is going on. There's quite a few international players from all over the world in this March Madness tournament. So that these players are very marketable and they're looking for them because usually international players come with a more developed game, Mr. Kumar, because they played at a more professional level coming in than the players that were brought up here in the U.S. Because the players brought up here in the U.S. play AAU, while these players are go to these camps, go to these academies, and they have a more rounded out game. So I'm looking forward to seeing all these talented players right now in prep school or in college, as in Sanjana Ramesh, continue to do good things, Mr. Kumar.
Absolutely. Let's hope many of them qualify for D1 schools because
Mhm.
those are the most challenging and most competitive schools. Wishing all these candidates.
Yeah,
I
good
think there
luck.
are 16 of them. All the very best. But I think we are coming to the end of the show, so we gotta ask our
Already?
audience.
Oh,
Ask our audience the customary, uh, you know, uh, liking, subscribing, and sharing, our YouTube channels, Ekalavyas and Patel Pick and Roll Sports. Of course, connect with us on our social media channels on Instagram and Twitter at Patel and Kumar. So, everyone, please do set reminders for the next show, which is on 8th of April at 9 p.m. IST.
yep, we cannot wait to see you there on April 8th, again, 9 p.m. IST. You can watch it on the Ekalavias YouTube channel and the Patel Pick and Roll Sports YouTube channel. Thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in. I know we are a little bit earlier than usual for the show. Thank you for putting your comments in the chat section below. Me and Mr. Kumar really enjoy the interaction and the back and forth. And thank you, Mr. Kumar. I always enjoy our little interaction, and we'll see you next week. Everybody, hope you have a great rest of your night, and
Yeah.
continue to stay safe. Thank you.
And yeah, and wish everyone
Oh,
very
happy
happy
Holi.
Holi.
Yeah.
Happy Holi, which is on Monday. And again, stay safe. I know a lot of the cities in India have banned playing Holi because of the recent surge in the coronavirus thing. But stay safe. Of course, take care of your family, your friends, and make sure you're healthy and fit to play basketball, to see our show. Once again, connect back with us April 8th, 9 p.m. IST.
Yep. We'll
Till
see you
then,
there. And again, happy Holi. Signing out.